Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our latest episode of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone is having a great week and looking forward to an awesome weekend. Knock on wood, we've had pretty nice weather, so hopefully that'll continue. I did want to go over a couple things today. I'll start off with a little bit of an overview of the real estate market, both on a national and a local basis. Interest rates came down a little bit more on a national basis, so they're more in the range now of about 6.25 to 6.3. So that's a good sign and a little surprising because the news from the Iranian conflict has been so up and down. It doesn't really seem to have improved appreciably. But fortunately, I guess there's more optimism for whatever reason, which is good. Mortgage applications on a national basis are a little bit up too, which again correlates to the lower interest rates. I'm sure the lenders are hoping not only do the rates continue to moderate, but it should also help their refinance business. Which doesn't affect us as much, obviously, in the sales end, but it's good for the lenders because, you know, we like our lenders to stay busy because everybody needs to make a living. And if the lenders get a certain amount of refinance business, it enables them not to have to cut back on staffing or layoffs and things. And obviously, the less unemployment we have, the better it is for our country and our economy. Secondly, I wanted to share a couple different things. You know, I talk about Hunters Creek a lot as I do a tremendous amount of business here. And the Hunters Creek inventory is staying pretty level. It hasn't really changed appreciably over the last 4 to 6 weeks. As I've mentioned in previous podcasts, normally I think it would have gone up by now because of the seasonality, but I think because of the Iranian conflict, it's pretty much stayed flat, but it hasn't gone down. So we'll keep our fingers and eyes crossed about that. One thing I did want to mention, I was reading a couple articles recently about real estate, and it kind of reinforced what I've always been telling people. Now, some of this varies a little bit from region to region, but it basically said that if you're thinking of selling a house, now is absolutely the best time. And they went back over about a 10-year period and determined that depending on what part of the country you were in, the best times to start a marketing campaign for a property that you wanted to sell was either March or April. And that's in Central Florida. I've definitely have told my customers that when they ask me, well, what's the best time to sell a house, I always tell them the best month to put it on the market's April. So we are getting to the last week of April. So if you've been on the fence about selling your house, and I understand that the Iranian conflict may have adjusted your thinking a little bit, but other than that, this is still the best time of the year to place a house for sale. And why is that? Well, historically, we sell more homes during the spring and summer months. And for pretty much reasons you would expect. Number one, people that are relocating here from colder weather climates, when they look to relocate, a certain percentage of them need to sell houses up north. So because we're going into the spring up north, their business increases, which increases their motivation to purchase in Florida. Secondly, for families, they want to get their children repositioned. So most school systems tend to end somewhere between the mid to end of May. And so they want to get their kids relocated during the summer months so they don't really have a disruption of their education. So if you figure, if you put a house under contract, let's say in May, it's going to take, on average 4 to 6 weeks to close it. So that's going to put you past the time when schools let out. So those are very consistent reasons and why the timing can definitely benefit sellers. And I think also people just enjoying looking at houses when the weather is better. I don't think anybody really likes going out, especially if you're up north, looking at houses when it's 25 degrees or it's snowing or it's hailing or whatever the case may be. Florida, fortunately, doesn't have to worry about the cold weather much. The only thing that we have to deal with usually is late afternoon showers. And so far in 2026, it's been kind of a dry year, so we really do need some more rain here. And then as we get more into the mid to latter part of the summer, we get into the hurricane season. But if we do have hurricane potential, we usually get enough lead time that you can prepare for that adequately. So keep in mind those dates and try to correlate that to what your selling plans are. And also, when I sit down with people, we kind of go over the timelines for their individual situation, because everybody's situation is different. Maybe job related, maybe school related. They may be having to sell a house in a market that's slower, so they need to allow more lead time. On the flip side, if they're selling and buying and they're in a hot market, then that's going to affect how they try to combine the two transactions. So there's always nuances to this. So that's why I'm always a big advocate of having a consultation session with potential customers. If they're local, I welcome doing it in person because I think it establishes more of a interaction. You can look people in the eyes. You can really get a sense of their situation. From the customer's point of view, they can get a sense of, do I know what I'm talking about? How genuine am I? Those sorts of things. Obviously, when we deal with out-of-state folks, we don't have that luxury a lot of times. So, most communications are going to be in some fashion by telephone, email, text, whatever the case may be. But the more personal communications you can get, the better. One thing I did want to share, doesn't necessarily relate to the folks listening, but I thought you might find it interesting. I'm getting an increasing amount of what I call more sophisticated scam buyers. Like yesterday, for example, I received 2 similar emails from customers that, their emails sounded somewhat legitimate if I wasn't aware of this. They said they had seen a listing of mine, and they referenced a national website, which I won't disclose, and they both referenced the same website. And they said they'd like more information, that they're either going to be investing or relocating in Orlando, and they like to chat with me to get more information and strategize, etc. So I answered them back quickly. I said, great, I'd welcome helping you. I gave them a little information about the property. And then I said, let me know a good day and time that I can reach out to you and we can talk on the telephone. I can get better insights into your needs and requirements. I can give you a plan of attack, answer questions that you have, go over more of the nuances of our real estate market, go over the fees that you might encounter, things of that nature, things that I always do with each customer. And interestingly, not surprisingly, they both emailed me back quickly and they said, thank you. And, here's when we'd like to talk with you and we'd like to do it in a Zoom call. And neither of them shared their phone number with me, and they both had the same thing about a Zoom call. And basically, I responded a second time and I said, let me have your phone number and I'll be glad to call you. Let's coordinate a day and time. And I said, by the way, I don't do Zoom calls on a call with anybody that I'm unfamiliar with, and so we need to do it on a phone call. And I said, if you're not comfortable doing it on a phone call and you insist on a Zoom call, then I'm probably not the right agent for you, and you'll have to contact someone else that's willing to do a Zoom call with you. And anyway, to make a long story short, the reason that I took that position is because there's a lot of these scammers that do a Zoom call with you, and they can infiltrate your computer system doing that, believe it or not, with viruses and different things that are going to not be to your benefit. So if you ever get solicited by somebody that insists on doing a Zoom call, do not do business with them, because it's a scam. It can cause you significant problems. Another thing in real estate that I wanted to share, before the podcast, I always go over some data online so that what I'm giving you on the podcast is fresh data. And there were some newer listings in Hunters Creek that, in my opinion, were dramatically overpriced. They were nice homes, but dramatically overpriced. And they're just going to sit. And one of the homes had been for sale a couple different times previously with the same MO. It was just significantly overpriced. And then this new one was a new listing on the market. And they both, were homes that certainly were sellable, in my opinion, based on what they had and didn't have, their location, their upgrades, etc. But they were so overpriced that either one of two things were going to happen. Either they were just going to sit and they wouldn't sell, or they would sit and ultimately they would lower the prices until they attained a pricing strategy that eventually would sell their house. But when they do that, usually when they sell for less than they would have sold for if they had priced them right to begin with. Or every blue moon, you could get lucky with some buyer that loves your house and really is unaware of the values that they should be set at. However, that's few and far between, because number one, if it's a mortgage transaction, they're going to have to get an appraisal on the house, and there's no way that either of these houses would appraise. And usually with your cash buyers, as a rule, they're sophisticated enough they're not going to pay way over market value. And especially in a market that we're in right now, because we're in a pretty neutral market, so people are just not going to be doing panic buying like you occasionally see in a really hot market. So I always track those homes carefully. The one home I was mentioning, I can tell from the previous history of it that seller, I guess, is either not really serious about selling or is just exploring the market and hope they get lucky. Now, you've probably heard me say in previous podcasts that I think the realtor is doing not only the seller a disservice, but themselves, because they're wasting their time. I know there's a percentage of realtors that either don't want to give the seller the true information because they're worried about A, insulting the seller, or B, the seller wouldn't hire them because of the information they provide. Or secondly, there are a percentage of agents that'll take every listing because they're hoping that A, they'll get leads from the listing by having their yard sign out there, or B, maybe ultimately the seller will get tired of overpricing it and will lower the price, and maybe they'll eventually get a sale. But that's not the way you should conduct real estate if you're a skilled agent. So as I've mentioned before, I don't ever do that. But there's a percentage of agents that for their own reasons do that. But I always keep a close eye on that. And so that leads me into a couple related topics, and that's credibility. Okay, and I use credibility in a couple of different aspects. Number one, what's the credibility of myself or a fellow agent? Are you credible? In other words, the things that you tell people, are they credible? Can the people trust what you're telling them? Or are you just a salesperson trying to get their business and not really getting business because you're going to do a quality job, but you're also going to give them an accurate assessment of their particular situation? And that's the only way that I do business. But obviously everybody, has a different style and puts a different emphasis on credibility. I know myself, at the end of the day, credibility and ethics and integrity are paramount to me. So I want to feel good about what I do. I want to feel that I worked 110% in my customer's best interest. When I'm trying to help my kids become better future adults and better citizens, I want to impart on them values that I think are important for them about doing things right, are ultimately going to be the best way to conduct business. And I'm also correlating that into our society right now. Think about how you view people nowadays, how everybody's skeptical of people's motives. You look at, I talk about politics a little bit on this show, but you look at the credibility of our politicians. I mean, we know because of the job that politicians are going to sell themselves, and they may try to be more ambiguous in some of the things they do. And so we're cautious in what the information that they put out and how we feel about that. But some of the things we've experienced in the last 10 years are beyond belief, and they continue to be that. In other words, repetitive and continuous misinformation and lies. Regardless of your political affiliation, whether you're a conservative or a liberal, whether you think our immigration policies were too liberal or not, whether you think interest rates are too high, those are all personal decisions, and everybody has the right to whatever their feelings are. But you should demand some type of accountability and transparency. And our current administration continues to lie to us. This conflict in Iran, and I use this because credibility is so important to me, it's just been a miscalculation and an abomination. What's our plan? Everything that we've pretty much done so far in quote unquote negotiations is not working. And if you do a little research, when we started this unilateral bombing of Iran, we killed their Ayatollah, and then his son, who's, according to all reports, got dramatically injured, is in charge. But that's completely backfired on us, because between the son's health and he doesn't have the credibility built up that his father did, he doesn't have the same control and power. So now the military has much more input in Iran's methodology, their aggressiveness, their negotiating posture, and it's their generals and their, I believe they call them, I might be having the wrong term, but their honor guard. But they're a much more confrontational and less likely to be negotiable. So it's even lessened the chances of getting peace. And so that's why our efforts up to date have been pretty futile. I hope that somehow common sense prevails for both sides, but I'm confident, unfortunately, in saying that whatever eventual ceasefire takes place and whatever type of terms we have, they're not going to be as good as what President Obama had negotiated during his term, which the current administration unilaterally canceled during their first term. And I'm sure the current administration is not going to admit to this. Again, the credibility. They're going to flat out try to twist information, misrepresent it. And a lot of people, because they want to believe it, are going to believe it. But you have to do your own research. You can't read internet blurbs. You can't hear one-sided opinions. You have to really get yourself educated on this. And this stuff is critical to our country. I mean, look at what we're experiencing now, runaway gas prices. The economy's not very confident that it's going to not go into a recession. Inflation still continues. AI is starting to cause more layoffs now. We have a lot of things to genuinely be concerned about, and certainly credibility is crucial. And then we have, of course, our Secretary of War. He's terminating high-ranking officials in the military like you and I would change socks. And what is his qualifications? I mean, he's a disgrace that he's in charge, but he's getting rid of, I'm sure, a lot of capable people because they're just not abdicating to him and saying, yes, sir, and agreeing with him. They're probably voicing some disapproval, and he doesn't like that, so he's just terminating them. And, it makes you think twice. I mean, this is our military. This is in charge of our security, and they're getting rid of a lot of high-powered people. And it's not just one or two. There's been multiple generals. I think they just got rid of the secretary of one of the armed forces. And this guy seems to run unfettered. I just don't understand why President Trump likes him other than the fact that he's always complimenting President Trump in public. And we all know by now that President Trump loves for people to fawn over him. So it's kind of a scary thing. I know myself, if I had such poor credibility with my consumers and it was obvious that I was giving them misinformation, I wouldn't do business. And I certainly wouldn't get all the referrals that I get over the years, because people only refer business to you when not only have you been successful with them, but they've seen that you have their genuine interest in heart, and they see that you've really put them in a better position than before they hired you, and they enjoyed their interactions with you. So credibility is so crucial, and I don't understand how in our country we've kind of forgotten that lesson. Last but not least, I have to give a little blurb about sports. So the Orlando Magic will be playing Game 3, and I'm hoping against hope that somehow we get a better offensive game plan, but I'm not very optimistic about it. As I mentioned during my social media post yesterday, we just have horrendous shooting in this club, and there doesn't seem to be really anybody that's going to take the slack in shooting. I know Detroit's made a concerted effort to take Desmond Bane out of the game plan. They put their top defender on him, and Bane's our only good shooter. And if you take him out of there, they can really sag on the rest of the players. Even though Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero are good players, they're not good outside shooters. So I'm not really optimistic. The playoffs so far have proven quite interesting. Denver looks like they're struggling against Minnesota. Their top player has played poorly during the series. And Atlanta looks like they've got a chance to upset the New York Knicks. And the Knicks are an old adage, sometimes the grass isn't greener. In my opinion, last year when they got rid of their coach, Tom Thibodeau, who I thought had done an excellent job for them, they blamed him for not going into the finals of the NBA, even though they got the furthest they had gotten in years. And they brought in a new regime there. And in my opinion, the team's not as strong this year as they were last year. But it remains to be seen. We'll see if they can recover from their 2-1 deficit. So that's all for today. Everybody enjoy the weekend. Be safe. Be happy. This is Marty Kaiser out.